DEEPSTATEMUSEUM. Prepare yourself for the man of black.
Even in death, the secrets of Jeffrey Epstein remain tightly guarded. But earlier this year, I spearheaded a wired investigation that uncovered the data of almost 200 mobile phones belonging to visitors to his infamous pedophile island. The data was so precise, we were able to map the paths of these visitors to within centimeters, including their neighborhoods, buildings of origins, and the paths they took to get to the island. These digital trails document the numerous trips of wealthy and influential individuals seemingly undeterred by Epstein's status as a convicted sex offender.
It's time.
How do you like your ribs?
This is Little St. James, aka Epstein Island. These red dots on the map represent some of the 11,279 coordinates I obtained. They were left exposed online by a location data broker with ties to the Defense Department called NEAR Intelligence. Between 2016 and Epstein's final arrest in 2019, NEAR collected data on more than 200 cell phones that visited the island. We don't know why they did that or which client or prospective client of NEAR decided to query the data in this way to produce the maps. But the maps you'll see in this video show where visitors to Epstein Island spent most of their time. Let's take a step back. You might be wondering, where is Epstein Island anyways? Well, it's here. Little St. James is a private island that is part of the US Virgin Islands.
Go to hell and take your friends with you!
An unincorporated territory of the United States and the Caribbean Sea. Epstein purchased Little St. James in 1998 for $7.95 million.
The disease. I'm the cure.
It's about 71 acres, the size of 54 football fields. He made the island his primary residence and soon after began welcoming visitors and throwing infamous parties where he was accused of having groomed, sexually assaulted, and trafficked untold numbers of women and girls.
I know what kind of man you are.
The maps of the data collected by NEAR, and which we at Wired recreated here, indicate the most visited spots on the island. From the main house here with the pool, to the beaches and the large sundial, it's all on display, including the enigmatic Hilltop Temple site over here, which has been the focal point in speculations about Epstein's mysterious activities on the island. But the tracking of phones wasn't contained to Little St. James. Surveillance continued long after the visitors left. The data reveals the locations of visitors 30 minutes before and after arriving on the island, which shows us the exact routes everyone took to get there. Some landed here, at the Cyril E. King Airport on neighboring St. Thomas Island. With its private jet and VIP terminals, it was the go-to hub for Epstein's 200-seater Boeing 727 plane dubbed Lolita Express.
Carpet Day! No!
We see data points clustered at various area beaches, hotels, and luxury resorts, including the Ritz-Carlton Hotel here. To get to Epstein's Island, many visitors got on a boat at a designated dock at the American Yacht Harbor, a private marina on St. Thomas co-owned by Epstein at the time. From there, we see a flow of movement through Great St. James Island, the larger island just to the north, which Epstein purchased in 2016 for $22 million.
Remember Sally when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did!
I lied.
He had hoped to develop it, but was met with legal challenges after damaging the island's coral reefs and protected habitats. The data then traces visitors' movements as they are ferried to Epstein's private dock on Little St. James. Epstein also had a helipad on the island and owned at least one helicopter, a Sikorsky S-76, which he used often to transport himself, guests, and victims from the airport or elsewhere, according to legal documents and testimony. It's worth noting that the data reveals a regular flow of traffic to and from Little St. James between 2016 and 2019. A lot of people were visiting the island even after Epstein had pleaded guilty in 2008 and served jail time for procuring a minor for prostitution.
Diplomatic community.
It's just been revoked.
If we keep following the data trail and we widen our view, we'll see that the tracking of visitors continues once they have left the island and presumably gone back home. The NEAR intelligence data we uncovered pinpoints 166 locations throughout the United States and 80 cities across 26 states. Topping the list were Florida, Massachusetts, Texas, Michigan, and New York. The data points are labeled as common evening locations or common daytime locations. Typically, their homes or work. Many of the visitors were likely wealthy, as indicated by coordinates pointing to gated communities in Michigan, as well as homes in Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket in Massachusetts. We even have data points from a downtown Miami nightclub, and also the sidewalk across the street from Trump Tower in New York City. Before we jump to conclusions, some sources have highlighted interactions between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein at social events. But after Epstein's 2008 conviction, there are no verified reports of Trump maintaining a relationship with a convicted pedophile.
Anybody see Richie? Anybody know why Richie did Bobby Lupo?
Wasn't fucking there!
Take a look at this point over here in New Mexico. This is a property that was owned by Epstein, a secluded 8,000-acre ranch. Another property of Epstein's is seen over here on El Brio Way in Palm Beach, Florida. This waterfront mansion was sold, demolished, and is now being rebuilt. But it was where prosecutors claimed Epstein trafficked numerous underage girls with the intention of molesting and abusing them. But we don't just see the coordinates of wealthy homes amongst the data. The median household income of Palm Beach is more than twice that of nearby communities where we also see data points. Some of these points could represent victims or employees who worked on the island, which is why we're careful about revealing names and continue to carefully analyze the data. If we zoom out more, we notice something strange. There are no data points anywhere in Europe.
That's it. No more Mr. Knife Guy.
Dodge this.
Repatriate feeling. Spirit Santo.
Does this mean it was strictly Americans visiting Jeffrey Epstein on his island? No. We do see data points from the cache identifying origin cities in Australia, the Cayman Islands, and way over here in Kyiv in Ukraine. We know that Epstein himself had a place in Paris. And we know from victim testimony and flight logs that his associate, Jean-Luc Brunel, owner of a modeling agency in Paris, did visit the island. So why don't we see these data points? One possibility could be Europe's extensive privacy laws. Considered the strongest privacy and security law in the world, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, gives Europeans robust rights to their personal data, even outside of Europe. Under comparatively lax US privacy laws, Near Intelligence was able to source its location data for this precision surveillance.
What'd you do, Sully?
I let them go.
How did it happen?
I think they were on their way to a funeral.
To explain how this data might have been collected in the first place, we need to talk about the world of digital advertising and data brokers. The reason you get a targeted ad displayed on an app or a website is because apps on your phone have been transmitting information about you to ad exchanges and real-time bidding platforms. That information often includes your location data. Data brokers like Near Intelligence extract, repackage, analyze, and sell the data from these ad platforms. In fact, according to internal company documents from 2019, Near Intelligence, which has roots in Singapore and Bengaluru, India, claimed to have information on around 1.6 billion people in 44 countries. They offer a platform for searching that allows their clients to query their vast dataset. By drawing a box around a specific area like Little St. James, Near then provides insights about the devices it observed within the selected area. We don't know who or why someone searched Epstein Island, but the reports and maps they created were sitting unprotected and totally searchable as publicly accessible code. And that's where we found them. And those aren't the only Near Intelligence datasets that we found. Google's web crawlers were able to locate at least 2 other reports. One geofencing the Westfield Mall in the Netherlands, and another targeting a park in El Paso, Texas. This is data unrelated to our investigation about Epstein Island, but it shows how unsafe personal data can be. In some cases, it's just a Google search away. So pro tip, if you don't want your personal data swimming around in the murky waters of programmatic advertising, make sure you limit ad tracking on your phone, disable location services and third-party cookies, and use an ad blocker. So what happened to the island after Epstein reportedly committed suicide in the Manhattan federal jail while awaiting trial for sex trafficking? Well, in May of 2023, billionaire investor Stephen Dieckhoff purchased both Little St. James and Great St. James for $60 million. He's currently building a luxury resort in Little St. James that he says could open as early as 2025. Also, Ghislaine Maxwell, former British socialite and Epstein accomplice, was convicted in 2021 on 5 counts including sex trafficking of minors by force. Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire, tracked to $1 million home by federal agents using location data pulled from her cell phone. I'm Drew Varotra. The Wired investigation into the secret data of Epstein's Island continues.
Wipe yourself off, man. You dead.
You know, I think part of why Kamala's getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public. And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes. And Gates.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Would you raise your hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am. Would you please state your full name?
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
You're a terminated fucker.
Hasta la vista.
The sex crimes of millionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein are appalling.
I was unaware that I was going to be alone with him. I thought I was going to die.
More than 100 vulnerable teenagers and young women trapped in his depraved web.
He started touching himself.
Tonight, the Epstein Files, the latest on who knew what in the biggest sex trafficking ring in history. His elite circle of the wealthy and powerful on notice as thousands of damning new court documents are unsealed.
They will contain the names of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Prince Andrew and the former President Bill Clinton have been named.
More are expected to come out.
In the last few weeks, they've linked Epstein to some very famous names and exposed some very sordid details.
There are videos that exist.
We've been investigating this scandal since Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019.
Our featured film. Your flight attendants are Susan and Lance, and I'm Vic.
Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired.
This is where Jeffrey Epstein served his sentence. That he can still shock is extraordinary.
I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced.
As you'll see, this monster's tentacles continue to reach from beyond the grave.
What?
Refusing to answer lawyers on the grounds he might incriminate himself, Epstein thought his own silence would protect him forever. With his death by suicide in 2019 and the jailing of his former lover and right-hand woman Ghislaine Maxwell 2 years ago, Epstein's associates may well have thought the scandal was over. But after a decade of legal wrangling, more than 150 people have been publicly identified, linked to Epstein and his sex trafficking network.
One of my friend's sisters won out. She's just dead.
He was a brilliant manipulator, not just of vulnerable girls and women. He was a brilliant manipulator of powerful men.
A really heinous crime on an absolutely massive scale that was allowed to continue and continue and continue.
Jeffrey Epstein's vast wealth gave him access to whatever he wanted. As we now know, the globe-trotting multi-millionaire created a network where young women were supplied to him wherever he went.
I realize what I want. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. What I'm really free to do is I'm free to follow my own personality.
properties all over the world, he felt free to abuse in the privacy of his various homes.
This is New York, this is Palm Beach, this is California, this is Paris, this is London, this is wherever Epstein was touching down. He needed to have girls on constant call. In every single state or every place that he goes to, he's already got people lined up and makers making that happen.
You are terminated.
None of this would ever have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Virginia Giuffre. Her allegations of sexual abuse against Epstein, Maxwell, and famously Prince Andrew have fascinated and repulsed the world. In 2015, Virginia sued Maxwell for defamation. These latest documents are, in the main, sworn statements collected for that case.
It's hard. It's really hard being back here.
We met Virginia 5 years ago when she bravely returned for the first time to the Epstein mansion in Manhattan.
I was abused by people that I can't even mention here. There's a lot of scars hidden behind those walls.
No man can kill me.
I am no man.
This should be ripped down. It should be burned to the ground. Some of my worst memories are from this place.
I continue to be shocked by just how awful this story is. The damage that was done to these women is incredibly hard to even express and completely life-altering for them. It's incredibly unfair that this was allowed to happen with impunity for so long.
Lucia Osborne Crowley is a journalist and author who has long covered the Epstein case. She believes the significance of the new Epstein files can't be overstated.
It's really important that we understand the difference between having these allegations swirl around and seeing that people were willing to swear to them under penalty of perjury. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, and they were all willing to do it and to swear to the truth of it.
Lucia also had a front row seat when victims testified against Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell when she was convicted for sex trafficking in 2022.
A lot of what Jeffrey Epstein got away with, he wouldn't have been able to do without her helping to recruit, groom, and entice underage girls.
But she wasn't just the organizer, was she? She was also an abuser herself.
Yes. So we also heard at trial from multiple victims that she was in the room when the abuse was happening and that she engaged in the abuse herself.
But the documents released by the court put the spotlight on the role played by others in Jeffrey Epstein's inner sanctum.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
The most controversial revelation comes from emails sent by Sarah Ransom, who was abused and trafficked by Epstein. Those emails claim she has seen video recordings made by Epstein of an unnamed friend having sex with Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Richard Branson.
All right, fall in behind the last man.
I don't think you can drop us off, badass.
You're right, but I'll get an A for effort.
12-gauge pump, boys. It's only got 3 shots. You can't get us all.
We know he can add and he can subtract, so who wants to be next here?
All three men vehemently refute the allegation, and in the past, even Sarah has denied the existence of the tapes. But just 2 weeks ago, she stood by her original claim in a Zoom call with Good Morning Britain.
It's no secret that everything was recorded. I've also seen recordings in his office. There are videos that exist. The people that know they exist, I'm sure are very frightened of them being released.
fear may also explain the resounding silence from others named in this recent mass release of documents. According to thousands of pages of sworn statements by women abused by Epstein, the men now in the headlines are potential witnesses. They place them at the locations where the abuse commonly took place.
The vast majority, including all the names that we're hearing about the most, there are no allegations of criminality. They are just listed as potential witnesses.
If these people are not being accused of any wrongdoing, why have they been named?
The question is what they saw, who they met, what questions they asked themselves about why girls of that age would be in any of the Epstein homes. And if they didn't ask themselves questions about that, why didn't they ask themselves questions about that?
Anybody see Richie? Anybody know why Richie did Bobby Lupo?
Missing our pants yet?
Don't you know the building is on fire?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
Dead.
Terminated.
What does it take to change the essence of a man?
The documents also shed light on the alleged dark motivation of Epstein's sex trafficking to get dirt on some of the world's most influential people.
There is, for the first time, the idea that he was quizzing the girls he sent to famous people for details of what happened for blackmail purposes. That has always been the suspicion that this man had cameras everywhere, that he kept blackmail tapes. That was his leverage. So I heard about Jeffrey Epstein sort of on the social Upper East Side grapevine in New York for a couple of years around the end of the 1990s and early 2000s. You know, he was a figure of mystery in that all people really knew about him was he had kind of out of nowhere known to be unconventional. People thought he was very good looking. And the only thing that people really knew about him, his sort of connector to the outside world, was somebody I knew. It was Ghislaine Maxwell.
With her link to English socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, Vicky Ward was the ideal journalist to profile Jeffrey Epstein. Her task in 2002 was to investigate the man behind the $500 million fortune.
My then boss at Vanity Fair magazine, Graydon Carter, phoned me up and said, you know, I've been hearing about this guy for years. Nobody knows who he is, where he got his money from, what his deal is. And that was how it all began.
But what started as a business story quickly turned sinister.
He liked to have parties with young women, but given that he was a very wealthy, at the time, you know, good-looking bachelor in his 50s, that didn't seem in itself, on the surface, so peculiar. But then I met this woman, Maria Farmer, and she told me that she had worked for Jeffrey Epstein.
No one immediately recognised how significant Maria Farmer would become in the Epstein story.
Boom.
I come in peace.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
Certainly not the authorities, when in 1996 she was the very first to report Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the FBI.
Ghislaine came in to get me one evening. Ghislaine escorts me to Jeffrey's room, and he's lying there, and he goes, well, here, sit down, you know? And so right next to him, and then Ghislaine sits on the other side, and they began assaulting me. But really, while I was lying there the whole time, I'm thinking, my sister's been around these people. My sister was 16. She's been around them alone.
Maria's fears were well-based. Her younger sister Annie had also been abused by the pedophile pair.
And it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
But in a pattern that would be set in the decades ahead, Maria's complaint of sexual abuse against her and Annie to police was ignored.
They just kept it all quiet, put it in the bottom drawer. And they were so dismissive that I just felt daunted and I stopped.
For more than 25 years, Maria Farmer has been filling her canvas with the Epstein story, a tale of horror that began in 1995, when, as a gifted student at the New York Academy of Art, she met Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein gave her a job to buy art for his New York mansion. As well, she became an unwitting witness to a steady stream of teenagers and young women through Epstein's front door. And shockingly, she had direct evidence of Maxwell scouting girls for the insatiable millionaire. What did you witness?
So several times I was in the car with her, and she would ask the driver to stop the car. And she'd dash across to the school or the park or wherever she was going, and she would write down her phone number for a child, a young girl. And then I'd see that child at the house. And she'd say they're auditioning. You know, I found a model in the park. And I thought it was really strange because I did see a couple girls in braces, and I've never seen a model with braces.
Do you reflect on how different life would be for so many women today if the FBI had investigated your complaints in 1996?
I guess you wonder where I've been.
Yeah. I think about it all the time. I do. And it hurts a lot. And I never had children because of it. Because I didn't feel like they would be safe.
It would be another 6 years before the Farmer sisters would again contemplate speaking openly about their experiences with Jeffrey Epstein. When they met with journalist Vicky Ward in 2002, Maria and Annie were nervous. Did it take a lot for you to convince them to open up to you, to talk on public record?
It did. There's no question. They were very afraid of these very powerful people. And I felt that at least Vanity Fair magazine was also powerful. By us publishing their allegations, that would afford them protection. And so I think that we all proceeded under that premise, and unfortunately that premise got exploded in the worst possible way.
What blew it up? What happened?
Well, what happened as this piece was going forward and I had to finally put all the allegations, both of the business stuff and the farmers' allegations, to Jeffrey and Ghislaine, they in their different ways went completely berserk.
Epstein was instantly menacing, a man prepared to bully and intimidate to save himself.
He treated the entire thing as a game, a really dark, twisted game. He even said to me at the beginning, okay, let's play chess. I'll be black, you be white, you get the first move. And from there, it descended into a sort of horrific game of cat and mouse. He would phone me every day. And then he told me that if he didn't like what I was going to write, he was going to have his witch doctor place a curse on my unborn children, and that was off the record. Then he told me he was going to sue me and ruin me personally, And I was just really frightened of what this man could do.
Yeah, so even though the threats he was making against you were quite preposterous, you took him seriously. Like you were genuinely frightened.
Yeah, because at the end of all of this, at the end of months of digging, meeting the farmer sisters, there was still this question mark. Who is this guy?
But it only got worse when Epstein made a personal visit to Vicky's boss at the time, the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair. Epstein got the result he demanded. Maria and Annie Farmer's allegations were cut from the story that went to print in late 2002. So as the journalist who'd uncovered these allegations and convinced these sisters to go public, what was your reaction to see that your work was not in your article?
Well, I remember bursting into tears and saying to the person who was directly my editor, we've exposed these poor women. I mean, this is unconscionable.
Was it a reflection also of an abuse of power? I mean, if Jeffrey Epstein walked into the editor-in-chief's office, he wasn't there to say hello.
Of course. 2002 was an era in which Jeffrey Epstein and other predators, Harvey Weinstein were running the world. And women everywhere weren't speaking up. And the idea that two men would have a meeting after which these allegations would get pulled. I mean, in the world we live in now, that is, it's monstrous.
Vicky's boss, Graydon Carter, denies being influenced or intimidated by Epstein. But either way, the Vanity Fair story didn't go anywhere near exposing the depths of Epstein's depravity.
I only got the very, very, very tip of that iceberg. I didn't get to the den of iniquity that we now know was really going on behind Jeffrey Epstein's closed walls in the mansion in New York and on his island and in Palm Beach.
Around that mansion, that's where this part of the sex trafficking ring really kind of came to life.
Palm Beach, Florida is home to some of the wealthiest people in America, an exclusive enclave for the rich and powerful, including former President Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein's luxurious home here graced the foreshore, its white walls and inscrutable exterior hiding a dark truth. A place where it's estimated more than 100 girls were tricked and abused, their lives changed in an instant.
At 14, I was still in middle school. I was straight A student, never even got a B. I played the first chair trumpet. I was the captain of the cheerleading squad. And then after I met Jeffrey, I just completely quit.
This is where you were living for a while?
Yes, this is where I was living when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein was 48 when a teenage Courtney Wild entered his orbit in 2001. At the time, she was living in this trailer park, one of West Palm Beach's poorest communities. Do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein targeted areas like this?
Yeah, definitely targeted, children like myself that were vulnerable to him and his money, and we felt like we were being helped and saved by him when ultimately he was just preying on us.
As Courtney told me in 2019, her experience started when she was brought to the millionaire by another 14-year-old to make much-needed cash. The trap had been set. What were you expecting to happen? Why did you think you were coming here?
Well, I knew that I was coming here to give a guy a massage and to make $200. I did know that. It was never told to me that I would be molested by this man or anything like that.
Inside, Courtney very soon discovered the massage was cover for a terrible, well-rehearsed crime.
We were taken upstairs. It was like a circular stairwell that led to a hallway that led to his bedroom, which the massage table was in his bedroom bathroom. You know, he asked us to get comfortable, to just, you know, take our clothes off, to be in our bra and panties.
Were you abused during that session?
And so we would massage him for about 30 minutes, and then whenever he was ready, you know, rolled over and asked the person that brought me to go downstairs and wait. And once that happened, then that's when the sexual abuse happened, yes.
You're 14 and in a completely alien situation, an incomprehensible position. How did you react?
I just remember afterwards how I felt walking down the stairs, and I just felt so dirty and so just like a piece of me had been taken. Dirty, I felt, it was like my dirty little secret.
Virginia Giuffre's experience was eerily similar, except her recruiter was not a fellow teen, but the sophisticated and seemingly trustworthy Ghislaine Maxwell. Virginia was 16 and working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when Maxwell spied her reading a textbook on massage.
She just seemed very nice, and she said, I've got a person that I know who's actually looking for a traveling masseuse. And if you want, I can get you an interview with him. If he likes you, we can get you educated. You'll be a real masseuse. And you'll get to travel and see the world. And you know, like, she made it sound like it was a dream come true. And it wasn't.
Within hours, Virginia was at Epstein's Florida mansion, lured there by Maxwell's promise. It ended in a devastating sexual attack.
So put it this way, we did the back of him, we did the back of Epstein, and then when he turned over, that's when I was instructed that's when I was instructed to get undressed and have sex with Jeffrey Epstein while Ghislaine Maxwell was participating as well.
You want to take a moment?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
So you were abused by both of them in your very first encounter?
Yeah, both of them. I was abused by Ghislaine and Epstein. I don't mean to sound sexist in any way, shape, or form, but I expected it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And, yeah, I think that's what hurts the most.
Maxwell's role as Epstein's co-conspirator, for which she is now serving a 20-year jail term, is well known. But in truth, it went well beyond Maxwell. The pair devised a scheme to feed Epstein's voracious appetite. They lured poverty-stricken girls in with cash, fanning their dreams of a better life. According to journalist Lucia Osborne-Crowley, by the time the sexual abuse began, many were too invested in their promises to get out.
This was a well-oiled machine of finding vulnerable young girls who really needed someone to look after them, and then also using those girls to try and entrap younger and younger girls. And a lot of that, it seems, was developed in Florida.
How many girls do you think you brought to Jeffrey Epstein?
At the minimum 50, but anywhere from 50 to 70 girls.
And what were their ages?
The same ages as me, 14, 15, 16. I just hold a lot of guilt and shame for doing those things. And just to know that I had any influence on that happening to somebody else, just, you know, it really is just devastating and breaks my heart.
Epstein's vile pyramid scheme might have continued unchecked, if not for the stepmother of one of his teenage victims, who called the Palm Beach Police Department in 2005.
It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters. Found out that ended up being that they went to Palm Beach to a gentleman's house, and they start out by giving this gentleman a massage, and he pays them. If he likes them and he thinks that they're pretty enough, he keeps them around to do other things. Okay. So I I wasn't quite sure if there was an investigation or if you guys had any word. Well, this is the first I'm hearing of it.
That initial call was so alarming, the police launched an investigation. And it didn't take them long to uncover the revolting scale of Epstein's network.
Did Jeff know anybody's real true age, or he didn't care?
I don't think he cared. He told me the younger the better.
He asked me to take my shirt off, so I took my shirt off.
Okay, so were you in bra or were you topless?
I ended up being topless, yeah. He started getting a little excited about it, and he started touching himself.
During the massage, did he ask you to remove your pants, or?
Yeah.
Police interviewed a staggering 40 victims whose ages ranged from 13 to 16. Their accounts were shocking enough. But what they found in Epstein's home was a creepy insight into his depraved life. Dozens of nude photos, a steam room, and a massage room with sex toys. Among the damning evidence were phone message pads, clearly showing a trade in young girls, scheduling them for massage appointments. And flight logs listing girls being transported aboard Jeffrey's private plane, dubbed the Lolita Express.
I think it's really important to know that it is actually much, much worse than we think.
In 2006, much to the relief of police, this predator was finally caught, a wealth of evidence amassed against him. But his own vast wealth and his immense influence saw him escape charges that should have landed him in jail for life. Instead, he served a mere 13 months when prosecutors accepted his guilty plea to the minor charge of soliciting a child for prostitution. But while he was technically an inmate at the Palm Beach County Stockade, he really just slept there.
It was essentially a slap on the wrist. He got 12-hour work release from prison every single day. Other journalists have described it as he just basically had to sleep in a crappy motel for, a bit over a year.
For many, the most outrageous part of Epstein's plea bargain was a seedy deal he struck with the Attorney General for the Southern District of Florida. It gave Epstein and any alleged co-conspirators, known or unknown, immunity from further prosecution, supposedly forever. Worse still, none of his victims were told about the deal.
How do you feel about that? To be sexually abused by a man and have the government know, and then actually, co-conspire with the perpetrator to make sure nothing happens to him is just so, it just sounds unreal.
Why do you think the government did that?
My personal opinion about that is, money, power, and I think that there was a lot of people involved in this underage minor sex ring that they were running, and I think everybody wanted it to go away.
So you believe that there was a conspiracy at play here?
Oh, absolutely.
It really is a sordid story, everything that happened in Florida, and the fact that authorities did know, did arrest him, did charge him, and he still was able to continue.
And according to Virginia Giuffre, the abuse didn't stop with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not just their sexual plaything. She was now part of their international sex trafficking ring, lent out to whomever they liked.
I was trafficked to other billionaires. I was trafficked to politicians, professors, even royalty. It was the elite of the world. It was the people who run the world. It was the most powerful people in the world.
Ghislaine was this sort of very exotic, glamorous figure who would drop in and, to be honest, name drop a lot of famous names that she'd been hanging out with. We heard about Bill Clinton and sort of all sorts of other people. And we also knew that she was very good friends with Prince Andrew. and that Jeffrey Epstein would sometimes have Prince Andrew to stay.
As a British expat in New York, journalist Vicky Ward moved in similar circles to socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of disgraced mega-rich media tycoon Robert Maxwell. Following her father's suspicious death aboard his boat in 1991, Ghislaine moved to New York, where she started her relationship with the millionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In 2002, Vicky was assigned to write a profile of the mysterious financier for Vanity Fair magazine.
When I began reporting this piece, I actually ran into Ghislaine Maxwell, and I sort of said breezily, "Oh, Ghislaine, yes, I'm writing this story about Jeffrey and the money." And I was really taken aback when she started to cry. I'm like, why is this woman crying? This doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, I didn't know that I was, from her perspective, probably in danger of pulling back the curtain on what was an absolutely horrific criminal sexual enterprise involving both of them.
Epstein and Maxwell complemented each other perfectly. He had the money she was used to, she had the contacts he wanted. The most high profile, of course, being Prince Andrew, who is famously accused of abusing the then 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre at Epstein and Maxwell's invitation.
We went to Club Tramp and he danced with me and he sweats a lot and he smells funny. And then we get in the car and Julian tells me in the car that I have to do what I do for Jeffrey and Prince Andrew. And that's when I learned what was going to happen.
There's a slight problem with this recipe, because
it was a claim and counterclaim that turned this royal's life upside down. His ill-advised decision to appear on the BBC in 2019 left him, if not sweating, then red-faced. His attempt to convince us he knew nothing of the teenage Virginia fell flat when this photo, taken in 2001 in Maxwell's London apartment, resurfaced.
She provided a photo of the two of you together.
Yes.
How do you explain that?
I can't. Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
Your friend suggested that the photo is fake.
I think it's, from the investigations that we've done, you can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph. So it's very difficult to be able to prove it, but I don't remember that photograph ever being taken.
So as you know, Prince Andrew denies the allegations against him, and he says that this photo is a fake, that he was never there, and that is not his arm, and they're not his fingers.
Those are his fingers. That is Andrew. This photo has been verified as an original, and it's been since given to the FBI, and they've never contested that it's a fake. And I know it's real. And he needs to stop with all of these lame excuses. We're sick of hearing it. This is a real photo.
And that was the first time you met him?
And that's the very first time I met him. And that's right before I was abused by him.
How many times were you trafficked to him?
3 times.
Her allegations against Prince Andrew are laid bare in the newly unsealed court documents. The disgraced royal is mentioned 69 times, and not just by Virginia. Johanna Schoberg, who was 21 at the time, claims to have had her own traumatic experience with Prince Andrew. And she says she saw the Prince and Virginia together at the Epstein Mansion in New York. According to British-based Australian author Lucia Osborne Crowley, her account, given under oath, is damning of the Prince.
We also have an allegation from a separate victim, Johanna, who has said that she was groped by Prince Andrew. So that's incredibly significant because we have sworn testimony from a second person corroborating that he did engage in illegal acts relating to minors.
Do you expect Prince Andrew to be under further legal scrutiny?
I think that certainly Prince Andrew will be facing many, many, many more questions given what we've learned in these new documents, and it's really important, I think, for the authorities to look at the fact that there is a second person who's alleging that he broke the law, and whether they need to speak to those victims and other potential victims to see if there is anything that they can or should be charging him with.
I wonder if you have any sense now of guilt, regret or shame about any of your behaviour and your friendship with Epstein.
As far as my association with him was concerned, it had some seriously beneficial outcomes in areas that have nothing to do with what I would describe as what we're talking about today.
Prince Andrew has since found regret, but continues to deny all the allegations levelled at him. He settled with Virginia Giuffre on the eve of their civil trial in 2022, reportedly for more than $15 million. In settling with her, the prince likely thought the saga was over, but the release of these latest documents once again raises questions for him and many other Epstein associates.
Those are very, very wealthy, powerful people, and so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
Billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested, charged with sex trafficking involving underage girls.
He could face up to 45 years behind bars.
It was a prized catch. In 2019, the roar around Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring was so loud, police were forced to act. Neatly befitting the lifestyle of a jet-setting millionaire, Epstein was nabbed on his private plane as he landed back in the US from Paris. For his most outspoken victim, Virginia Giuffre, his arrest was a gift more than 20 years in the making.
I never thought it was going to happen. I honestly thought he was just going to continue to get away with it over and over and over again, just like he proved so many times. So yeah, it was like Christmas in July. Big time.
But the expectation that Epstein would finally face his crimes was dashed when he was found dead by suicide in his jail cell a month later.
Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life.
The bombshell development raising many new questions.
With Epstein dead, the charges against him were dismissed, denying justice to his many victims. And his co-conspirator, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, became the most wanted woman in the world as she went on the run.
So the idea that this woman could be involved in something as depraved and horrific as this, that was mind-boggling.
As journalist Vicky Ward and the rest of the world watched on in fascination, Ghislaine was tracked down to a luxurious New Hampshire hideaway after eluding police for a year.
Today we announced the arrest of one of the villains in this investigation.
This day to me has been like one of the best days of my life. I have not stopped smiling and crying happy tears. And I'm just, I'm elated to know that she's where she belongs.
Immediately upon Maxwell's arrest, Virginia spoke for all the victims of the sex trafficking ring.
She ruined so many lives. She belongs in jail. You want to hurt kids? That's where you go.
In 2022, Maxwell was convicted on 5 sex trafficking counts. The then 60-year-old sentenced to 20 years in jail. She has lodged an appeal which will be reviewed in March and continues to claim her innocence from jail, as she told her brother, Kevin Maxwell.
Everyone was always asking who is the real G, who's the real Ghislaine.
It's definitely not the person portrayed. I feel completely divorced from the person that people reference and talk about.
And so the biggest misconception of you?
That I'm the cruelest, meanest, horriblest person who's committed crimes.
Yeah.
then I mean, I literally haven't seen any details that are accurate.
Lucia Osborne Crowley was one of the few journalists granted access to the court to report on Maxwell's trial.
It was surprising that even at her own federal sex trafficking trial, she didn't appear to have a lot of humility and still was incredibly confident. And I certainly got the sense that she did not expect to be convicted.
And certainly no remorse.
Certainly no remorse. She basically said that she was sorry for the damage that Jeffrey Epstein had caused them, and that's all she said.
With Maxwell behind bars and Epstein dead, this case appeared to be resolved. But the recent release of these court documents shows how little we still know.
There are so many names that we are left with question marks about. What was his appeal? Why did some of the most powerful men in the world flock to him? What was Bill Gates doing around Jeffrey Epstein? I'd love to hear from Bill Clinton what he saw in Jeffrey Epstein. That would be great to know.
In all, more than 150 names have been linked to the disgraced millionaire. But apart from some denials of any wrongdoing, the silence from those identified has been deafening.
We've got evidence of sworn testimony where people are naming very, very powerful people who would have been in a position potentially to do something about what was going on here. And instead we had a sex trafficking ring that went on for at least 2 decades, possibly 3, with almost complete impunity. And so that's the point that I think we really all need to hold on to about scale here, is that not the splashiness of these names, but just how many there are, just how many people there are that victims pointed to say, this person can corroborate my story, this person can be a witness, this person met me on the island, this person saw me. And those are very, very wealthy, powerful people, and so far they've escaped without many questions being asked of them.
We'd have to assume that they're just running from this as far and as fast as they can.
Yes, well, I've been quite surprised at the silence over the last couple of weeks, if I'm completely honest. I would have thought that at least some of these people would have felt an obligation to do some explaining.
At the very least, association with Jeffrey Epstein raises questions of judgment, right? Nobody looks good for having hung out with Jeffrey Epstein now knowing everything that we know. Whether or not they should be held accountable as to whether or not there was any criminal activity. And obviously we just don't know. One has to hope that because we now know so much more, that there is so much public scrutiny on this, that the wheels of justice will turn in a way that they definitely didn't for a very long time.
The legacy of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell is to expose a darkness too awful to imagine. But as difficult as it is to comprehend, it would seem there's even more to be revealed.
Certainly from what I know, that there are more people who aren't even on this list that either knew or potentially participated in what was going on around Jeffrey Epstein.
Do you expect that others will be charged, that others will face prosecution?
I very much hope so. I think it's really important to know it is actually much, much worse than we think, and that we're comfortable accepting.
You know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing happens to everything else.
We're not just gonna let you walk out of here. Who's we, sucker? Smith, Wesson, and me.
You've just been erased.
Do you want to hear my last words?
I just did.
Being me! It's not something you can live with!
I'm learning to live with a lot of things.
9 years of ballet, asshole!
Where's your butler friend?
Oh, he blew a fuse. Sorry, Ted. You've been served.
I'm at a loss for words right now. I do not believe that this is the same person we're talking about.
Brian Belizaire, stunned to learn about the surprising past of his neighbor here on Mount Pleasant Street in Derby. The AP reports Derby police are working to confirm that Stephen Hoffenberg, the Ponzi schemer and Jeffrey Epstein mentor, was found dead in an apartment earlier this week. NBC Connecticut has not independently confirmed that.
Like, completely different end of the spectrum, if you will, from the person I interacted with. From what you're saying, I mean, just seemed very humble, very quiet, very low key. But I did, you never know people. This is really something you never know who next to.
The AP detailing the 77-year-old's efforts to once buy the New York Post and then was sentenced to 20 years in prison for one of the country's largest Ponzi schemes. He reportedly admitted to swindling investors out of $460 million. Hoffenberg later claimed Epstein was the architect of the scam, though he was never charged in the fraud. Epstein died by suicide in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on charges that he sexually abused dozens of girls. Hoffenberg was released from federal custody in 2013, and neighbors tell us he moved in here in the last year or two. Derby police say they were called for a welfare check at the apartment earlier this week.
When the cops knocked on my door, saying, "Hey, do you know your neighbor?" People has been trying to get in touch with him for weeks and no answer. So that's when I knew something was wrong.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Missing video is raising still more questions in the investigation of the federal jail cell death of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Federal prosecutors said yesterday video of Epstein's jail cell when he made his first suicide attempt no longer exists. That's important. Epstein died by suicide weeks later on August 10th. The well-connected 66-year-old was accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls. Mola Lenghi reports on the growing criticism of the jail where Epstein was held.
A recent 60 Minutes broadcast shows the New York jail cell where Jeffrey Epstein hanged himself last August. But now, there's new focus on the suicide attempt Epstein made weeks before he died. Video of the cell exterior where Epstein first tried to end his life was sent to federal investigators and restored last week. But on Thursday, prosecutors said it's the wrong video. In a letter, federal prosecutors said the jail inadvertently preserved video from the wrong tier at the jail. And as a result, video from outside the defendant's cell no longer exists. CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
When I read this letter, I had to reread it because I said, this just can't be happening. This is madness.
Nicholas Tartaglione was Epstein's cellmate at the Metropolitan Correctional Center for the weeks between Epstein's July arrest and his first suicide attempt. Bruce Parquette is Tartaglione's attorney.
It is the worst facility, jail or prison that I've been to in 35 years of practicing law.
The missing jail cell video could reignite speculation of a cover-up. The detention facility continues to be under fire for multiple failures before Epstein died in custody.
When you've got videotape disappearing, cameras not working, guards allegedly not being where they're supposed to be, it's no wonder that Jeffrey Epstein is dead.
These things can happen, right?
These things can happen, but they all shouldn't happen in one place.
And Mola Lenghi is outside the facility in New York City. Mola, good morning. These things can happen, but all of them happening? What did the jail have to say about this lost video?
Well, Tony, they've had nothing to say so far to us when we've reached out to them. The MCC, through the Bureau of Prisons, which of course oversees the MCC, declined to comment, citing the ongoing investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's death, which really comes as no surprise. The BOP has remained silent on all things Epstein throughout the course of this investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's death, which, by the way, Tony, 5 months ago today, Epstein died.
Thank you very much. We should remember the stakes here. I mean,
well, it's an almost incomprehensible series of coincidences to zero.
I thought Ricky was dead on, summing it up as she always is. She said, when she said it's maddening, joking.
Playing his golden harp.
Fox News alert. The government has been hiding Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs since he committed suicide 4 years ago. Fighting international sex trafficking should appeal to everybody, no matter what political party. We care about women and children. We care about law and order. We care about corruption. So when Senator Marsha Blackburn from the great state of Tennessee tried to subpoena the flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein, we were surprised that Senator Dick Durbin from the great state of Illinois was making it difficult. And why hadn't Dick Durbin subpoenaed the flight logs himself? Why hasn't any politician, until Marsha Blackburn tried to find out who flew on the world's most notorious child sex trafficker's plane? Perhaps they have a good explanation for flying on Jeffrey's jet, like Bill Clinton, who was on humanitarian missions, we're told. Are these flight logs being used as blackmail? What powerful people were on the plane? And what kind of intelligence operation was Epstein running? And why would Senator Dick Durbin be running interference for a dead pedophile? We sent Hillary Vaughn to ask him.
Chairman Durbin, can I ask you a quick question? Why won't you subpoena Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs?
So, who are you?
Hillary Vaughn with Fox.
Fox, of course. I don't know anything about these flight logs.
Why won't you subpoena them? Why don't you want to know?
The issue. I know who Epstein was, but I certainly don't know anything about the issue.
He was charged with sex trafficking, so why don't you want to know who was utilizing his private plane?
Raised by anyone.
Senator Blackburn has wanted to subpoena them, and there hasn't been a vote in your committee.
Said a word to me, not a word.
But aren't you curious, like, what high-profile or powerful people might be closeted predators and pedophiles? Doesn't that concern you? So why won't you subpoena them if you can?
It's the first time anyone has raised it. Thank you, Fox.
So are you curious about it? Will you do it?
Durbin's a liar. Last week, Primetime asked his office why he was blocking votes to subpoena Epstein's flight logs, and they said there wasn't enough time. And then at today's hearing, Durbin complained that Fox was asking him to investigate sex trafficking. Poor little Dick. Durbin.
Senator Blackburn, before you leave, I want to make a point for the record, since I understand you made some statements about the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs. There's a Fox reporter in the hallway who asked me about this, and I said I had not spoken to you one time about this issue. I think you'll back me up on that. I'm not mistaken. I didn't know that this was even a subject of your amendments, which, if you'll recall, you were the first on the list until the 2-hour rule was invoked. I don't know anything about this request on your part. I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But I haven't done any discussion with you to this point. Correct?
Mr. Chairman, I know, and I think you're fully aware that I had 2 amendments, one dealing with Epstein and Sotomayor. I brought it up previously.
I have to confess I didn't know that you offered that amendment. Happy to discuss it with you, but I want to point on the record. You and I have never personally discussed this, have we?
We talked briefly on the floor at the
Never mentioned
conclusion.
what the subject matter of your amendment was. You said you wanted to offer.
In committee, I brought up the subject matter of my amendment.
Not in my
3 weeks.
Not only was the subject matter brought up in Durbin's presence, Senator Blackburn was speaking directly to him.
I seek recognition.
Senator Blackburn?
Since we're in the business of issuing subpoenas now, here are a few more that I filed. A subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate to provide the flight logs for his private plane.
Thank you, Senator. When I recognized you, I didn't know what subject you wished to speak to. As I announced at the beginning, the first thing we'll consider the 2 judicial nominations, then we will move to the subpoena.
All right, so we caught him lying. First, there wasn't enough time. Then, this was the first time he was hearing about it. Then, it was never brought up in his presence. Why is Dick playing dumb? And why hasn't he voted to subpoena the flight logs already? A week's gone by. Dick says he cares about Israeli women and children getting raped. Why doesn't he care about American children getting raped? We're going to stay on this. And so is Marsha Blackburn, who asked FBI Director Chris Wray about it today. Watch.
The last few weeks, I've been demanding some answers on Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and trying to get these flight records. What specifically has the FBI done to investigate the claims that Epstein's and others participated in, produced, possessed, and distributed CSAM?
As to the Epstein case specifically, I will tell you it's been a while since I looked at that case.
Should those logs be made public? They've been heavily redacted.
Well, as I said, it's been a while since I looked at the specific case. I can tell you that we've been increasing year over year, both the number of agents focused on these kinds of cases, the number of victims we've rescued, and so on to the specific case. Let me offer to have let me get with my team and figure out if there's more information we can provide.
Chris Wray hasn't looked at the Epstein case in a while. The FBI has the flight logs, the surveillance videos, and the computers, and they only got one conviction. A woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, the Matt Epstein's fixer. Not a single John. So he's going to have his guys get back to the senator and see what they can give her? What's going on here? Then Senator Kennedy asked FBI Director Wray about the Hunter Biden laptop. You're not going to believe what he said. He said the FBI isn't allowed to tell the truth in an election year.
Why didn't the FBI just say, hey, the laptop's real? Why didn't you just tell everybody the laptop's real? We're not vouching for what's on it, but it's real. This isn't a fiction.
Well, as you might imagine, the FBI cannot, especially in a time like that, be talking about an ongoing investigation.
You see all this controversy going on. Why didn't the FBI say, time out, folks, we're not getting in the middle of this, but the laptop's real?
Again, we have to be very careful about what we can say, especially in the middle of an election season.
That's right, the FBI can only lie in the middle of an election season. They're not allowed to tell the truth. And the FBI can't tell the truth after an election either, because the FBI still hasn't said the laptop's real. You know, because it's an ongoing investigation, even though the U.S. Attorney in Delaware didn't even crack open the laptop during his so-called Hunter Biden investigation. Now, Congress is supposed to have oversight over the Bureau, but they aren't allowed to see anything. The FBI just says, just send us $3 billion for the new headquarters and shut up. The FBI just conducts sham investigations so they can justify stonewalling questions about Democrat corruption.
Is the FBI, do they make a routine practice of allowing partisan political optics to prevent investigating serious evidence of corruption?
My instructions to our people on this and on every other investigation are that we are to follow the facts wherever they lead, no matter who likes it, no matter what political influence
then why did
may
you
be
get
out
the
there.
GPS data on where Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were?
Again, Senator, with respect, I can't discuss
But it's not with
ongoing
respect.
investigation.
And Director Wray, you and I have gone round and round on this, because I understand anytime you're asked about this, the answer is it's an ongoing investigation. Of course, the investigation isn't ongoing. You're not doing the work.
The only way the FBI is going to investigate the Biden family is if they go to Mass on Sundays. That's right. House Judiciary report says the FBI has been investigating Catholics. The Bureau designated strains of Catholicism as domestic terrorism and are treating the church like a gang or a terror cell. The FBI used undercover agents to interrogate a Catholic priest and a choir director. The FBI tried recruiting informants within the clergy. Is the FBI listening to you during confession? God, I hope not. Well, the director said it was just a mistake.
How many other parishes around the country have priests or choir directors been approached? By the way, are Catholic choirs now, are they breeding grounds for domestic terrorism? Is this your latest theory? How many other parishes have FBI agents approached priests and choir directors to ask about parishioners?
Look, Senator, we do not and will not conduct investigations based on anybody's exercise of their constitutionally
You
protected
have
religion.
done so, and your memo explicitly asks for it. Your memo labels traditional Catholics as racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists in need of investigation.
So after 9/11, the FBI infiltrated mosques and conducted surveillance of American imams to fight the war on terror. Remember how the ACLU, the Democrats, and the media found out about it and they were hysterical? But the ACLU, the media and the Democrats haven't said a word about the FBI infiltrating the Catholic Church. The left isn't actually against unconstitutional searches and seizures. They just want to be the ones searching and seizing. And Joe Biden loves to brag about his Catholic faith. Well, the Catholic Church was just illegally infiltrated by the FBI. I'm sure Biden will release a statement about Islamophobia. That's your part. Now, JFK was the first Catholic president in American history, and he was proud of his faith.
I'm a Catholic, and no Catholic has ever been elected president. The real issues in this campaign have been obscured. Not what kind of church I believe in, for that should be important only to me, but what kind of America I believe in.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Dead.
Terminated.
Mr. Obsidian, prepare yourself for the Man of Black.